good afternoon, or good night. This is Alex with Big Man Small Farm. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is less fun, but something that I think comes up more often than we all care to admit. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm driving home from work, so my eyes are going to be on the road and not really on you guys. But you're not missing a whole lot. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of eye contact anyway. The topic I want to cover today is what to do and how to downsize a farm when your life changes. I think I shared in the intro video that my ex-wife and I split up in July of last year, and the farm was something that was built by and for two people to run. And still having a full-time job, the last 6 months I really had to think about what do I still want to do, what do I want to do more of, what do I need to do less of, and really take a hard look at not only the infrastructure, but the time everything was taking and the real value that I was getting out of it, and had to make some difficult changes because of it. Last July, or it might have been August, I got rid of all of the quail that I had and sold one of two of my quail hutches. And that was a pretty simple change where, that time of the year I was getting probably a dozen or so quail eggs a day. I believe the final count was 35 quail, but I was getting about a dozen or so eggs a day, and it was adding 5 or 10 minutes every day to just feed them and water them. But that really didn't include the time that it took to clean out their trays and things like that on the weekends. And so you add probably an extra 15 to 30 minutes, which is not a lot of time. And I'm well aware of that. But that also assumes that you're home every single weekend and you never do anything or go anywhere. Or, at the time I was traveling some for business. Assume that none of those things were happening. Or the more likely thing, that nothing else is going to break and be an emergency situation that you have to deal with. And I think this is 5 years living on a farm. There's always something that is trying to break or broken or breaking that needs fixed, or upgraded or reinforced or something along those lines. And so I made the decision to get rid of those quail. In addition to that, it also saved me their feed, and they were on a game bird feed, and the only animal that I had that was on that game bird feed. So it just made sense to get rid of them. I could have sold them off, but in the effort of timeliness, I didn't want to sell off half a dozen quail here, half a dozen quail here, and end up doing the same amount of work in addition to listing the animals for sale. Now, I did sell some earlier in the year before I had to make that transition. And I'll kind of talk about selling animals at the back end of this. But so made the decision to do that. My ex had bees, and when she moved out, the bees were never really my animal to deal with, or insect, I guess. But she sold them off, and it's kind of a niche crowd that finds a lot of these animals. So she got rid of those. And then as the fall went on, I had to look at what else I had. And I had 2 outside dogs, and then a total of 6 sheep, or 7 sheep, excuse me. 3 lambs, 3 ewes, and a ram. And all of them I could keep. I had the time to do it. And I could feed them. They had the space, all of those things. Now it would have been cramped this winter because I live in north central Indiana, and it doesn't get ridiculously cold for too often, but we do have some negative temperatures, and all of the animals need to have a place and shelter to go to get out of the wind. It would have been really cramped, and I'm not sure they all would have gone inside, but I probably had the space to do them. And the amount of time it takes really to deal with 6 sheep versus 1 sheep is not a whole lot different. It's just, are you moving a round bale or a square bale? And you do that every day, and you check water, and you do that. What I found happening was I was doing all of the work, but never spending the time to actually just go out and sit with the sheep. And not that they need a whole lot of attention, but that was something that I enjoyed in years past, is just kind of sitting there watching them do their thing, also keeping an eye on them and seeing for the little changes when somebody's starting to get sick, or you're giving them treats and you can kind of check the FOMACHA, or check their eyelids and see what they're looking at from a FOMACHA score, and are they carrying a heavy worm load? Does everybody need wormed? Doing those little things that they can be done on a once a week basis or once every 2 weeks. But I really think that we owe these animals a consistency where we're actually treating them as the obligation they are. I was raising them for meat, and I always think that I try to promise them one bad day of their life, and I wasn't doing that. And so earlier this year, I made the decision first to get rid of the lambs, and I was able to sell those off pretty early and pretty easily. And then recently, I also moved on my 3 ewes, and I think two for sure, maybe a third was pregnant when I did that. But I didn't actually sell them. I bartered them for something that I needed on the homestead, but it was essentially moving them on. I did end up keeping my ram. I'm keeping him for now. I've had a few rams, and he is the gentlest ram that I've had. He's not friendly, but he is very gentle, and he knows that I give him treats, and we've got a good relationship. He's shown no aggression to anybody, other than the one male goat that he's in with. That's to be expected. I'll keep an eye on him and may get rid of him, but a ram that's really good like that is not an everyday occurrence, and I'd like to keep him if I can. But had to make some decisions there. And when that flock started to shrink, the 2 outside dogs, the livestock guardians that I had, lost some of their job. They lost really all of their job. And over the summer, I had to make a decision that in some ways is tougher, because even though they are a working breed, I still think of dogs as a pet, and that's just the way it is. I rehomed the first one, and he went to a great farm that had, he has a job guarding a whole bunch of goats, and he'll do a great job there. But the other one was a puppy from my first litter on the farm, and she was a little bit more than a working dog and closer to a pet because of that. And I even tried bringing her inside, and to take a dog who really just wants to be outside and work and put her inside, number one, she wasn't as happy as I think she should have been, or could have been, not should have been. And number two, you're then taking a dog that is, in this case, probably 110 pounds and going through the potty training that you would with a new puppy. And that comes back to the time and effort that has to be put into that. And could I raise her inside like you would a puppy, and do I have the time to do that? And after a lot of back and forth, the answer was no. I had to make a hard decision there and move her on. All of this kind of comes down to, number one, do you have the time? Number two, are you giving the appropriate time to the animals that are there? And number three, is that time coming from something else that would be better for you? Over these last couple of months, I've found myself not going to the gym, or not spending as much time reading or doing projects around the house that I enjoy doing in some cases, and others that I just feel like I need to do. And I also didn't have the time to even say, I'll look at these sheep and butcher them. And so I was essentially paying to keep them and giving them what I consider to be substandard care, and not even benefiting from them. And as much as I wanted to keep them because I knew that I could, and I thought that it was the right thing at one time, I had to really reevaluate. And I think oftentimes people that are starting with animals, it's very easy to go from chickens to sheep to goats to turkeys and getting everything in. I've done that several times, and I'm sure that I would do it again, and get more animals, and I intend to get back into sheep at some point. But I need to do it at a point in my life that makes sense. And we lose sight of this fact once we start, that we don't have to do all of this. And finding the parts that fit our current lifestyle, not our ideal lifestyle, can be difficult and sometimes in some ways painful. But I think it's better for both the animal and probably for us. I mentioned selling animals, and I want to go into some more detail there. There are a lot of ways to sell animals. I know you're not supposed to sell them on Facebook, but many people do. And I would get questions when I would list these sheep that would tell me this person probably is not really ready to get into them. And, I would offer to give some advice or things like that. And I didn't feel confident about selling the sheep to some of these people. It takes time, but again, I feel like we owe it to the animals to find a good home for them, or the best one you can. that is going to care for them in the best way possible. Or inversely, if you're selling an animal that could be used for meat, there are people out there that are really upfront and say, hey, I'm buying this and I'm going to finish it and take it to the butcher. That's okay too. I think that people that will buy a 300-pound sheep and think it's going to be a pet, they end up causing that animal more discomfort than it really needs to. No matter how hard you try, a full-grown sheep isn't a pet. It doesn't want to be. I've made the mistake of thinking that they're cute, cuddly animals, and they're livestock. It's a different thing. Rehoming the livestock guardian dogs was similarly difficult. Like I said, they were more akin to a pet, but a pet that unfortunately needed a job to be satisfied themselves. Finding somebody that has the appropriate amount of space for them, especially meaning that these are not puppies, and these are dogs that have grown up working and living with livestock outside. Taking them inside isn't a great idea as only a pet. And find somebody that has livestock guardian dogs that they can work with, understands the breed, understands that they roam. Talking to people that have an eighth of an acre, well, we've got a backyard for it. It's probably not a good fit for a dog that's used to living outside. Now we only have about 5 acres, but that's a pretty big difference. And some other people say, well, I've got 85 acres and there's 3 livestock guardian dogs they can work with, and they've got a herd of sheep or goats to live with. That's a perfect fit, but it is really uncommon. I think more often than not, you're going to find somebody who has maybe got one other dog or is looking to get 2 dogs but wants to get them from different places and has a few animals. And it stands that this is not a breed. Most livestock guardian breeds are not content going from guarding animals to being a pet. There are some that are, but I think at their core they still really want to get out there and do something. But I think selling the animals in that case was the right call for me, my farm, and my situation. It doesn't mean it's fun, but if you're starting farming and expect everything to be fun, whether that be selling animals, buying animals, or caring for animals, I think you're in for a rude awakening, and hopeful that you'll heed some advice and learn from some of my mistakes, having bought several different kinds of animals and things like that when I wasn't prepared for them, and ended up having to go back on that. I know that when I move forward, once I figure out kind of a better flow for my day-to-day in the next couple of years, I will be very specific about the kinds of animals that I bring in, but having learned all of the things that they need, I will have a lot more preparation than I did, so that there isn't this back and forth. I think it's part of the process, but a part that I do not intend to repeat. All that said and done, this was kind of a brain dump and more of a thought process of what it's like to downsize a farm when either there are time constraints like my situation, or if there's an economic constraint that you're struggling with, whether you lose a job or lose a partner or whatever that looks like. But I hope it can be helpful for somebody, and thanks. This was Alex with Big Man Small Farm.